Somasanamantrasya mere prishtivishi chandra kurma devatashinu palanashni vinogaha omanhada shaktainu munantainu kunumanua Pritvitadatalaka devitam vishnajitatam chadaranamam nicham pavitam chasanam guru. Thank you, thank you.
Please forgive me for any offenses I didn't mean.
What?
Please forgive me for any offenses I didn't mean. Anything I used to bother others.
Hare Krishna. Nice to see you all here tonight. Haribol Sundar. Om Jnanati Mirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Viditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Datati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Parakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Bharan Sahagana Lalita Shivishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Krupasundobhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Do we have sliding microphone syndrome? It's a common thing. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, the living beings are called sentient beings. It means they're very sensitive. And they're very subtle also. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. And living beings are spiritual, parts and parcels of the Supreme Being who has qualities. Beautiful qualities, and it means that he's interesting. And it means the living entities are interesting also. In the Brahma Samhita, the translation given through the Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples says that in the spiritual world, living entities are all enjoyable and tasty, meaning there's some very juicy, interesting aspects of living beings. And the relationships between Krishna and the living beings are also very deep and very sweet. And there's also a way in which, as we've had experience in this world, relationships can be disturbed due to various aspects of miscommunication, or maybe sometimes there's based on that, there's even some offense or something through which our relationships can be temporarily hindered or severed and so forth. And that can be very emotional and difficult. Interesting topic also, how it is that living beings who come to the material world or in the material world are said to have been separated from their relationship with Krishna. Actually, the Shastra says we're not separated. Sanitya nitya sambandha prakritischa paraivasa. Brahma Samhita says that we have an eternal kinship. It's never really severed, but there's a way in which I become disconnected through turning the other way and not recognizing my relationship, as evidenced from 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, bhayam dvitiya binibeshata syad ishad apetasya viparyayo smritihi. Kavi Yogendra says that when one becomes absorbed in things that are not related to Krishna, then fear arises and one begins a life of anxiety when one's disconnected from Krishna. And also from the Chaturshloki Bhagavatam, the original 4 verses that Brahma heard from Krishna personally, which are the seeds of the entire Bhagavatam. Vratertam yat pratyeta na pratyeta chatmani tadvidyata manomhayam yatabhaso yatatamaha. When you see something that's not Krishna, that's not possible, because everything's Krishna, then you're seeing illusion. And when in illusion, one experiences darkness, fear, anxiety, and so forth. And there's a way in which when one acts in ignorance, one acts wrongly, makes missteps, commits offenses. And in that way, there are reactions that one has to deal with. So the main disease, the main ailment, affliction for a living entity in the material world, or those that are have disassociated themselves with Krishna, is ignorance, otherwise known as ignorance, ignoring Krishna. And the choices for a living entity are that he can live in a subordinate position to Krishna, or he can be in a subordinate position to Maya, the external energy. And those are the choices. So, Krishna goes about explaining in the Bhagavad Gita how association with the material nature renders one foolish. And for instance, prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. He says that one who identifies himself with the material body, the apparatus of the body, and thinks this is me, and that I'm the doer of things, becomes very foolish. Because actually things are going on by the control of the material nature. And coming to knowledge, Krishna says, Tattvavitu mahabaho guna karma vibhagayo guna guneshu vartanta iti matva nasajjate. That a person who comes to know the truth, higher knowledge, tattvavit, he knows the truth, guna karma vibhagayo guna guneshu vartanta iti matva nasajjate. Person comes to see how the modes of material nature are working and realizes that I'm not connected with these modes of material nature. I'm from a separate category of energy altogether. And such a person may become very thoughtful, as Krishna says also in the Bhagavad Gita, Bahunam janmanamante jnanavam mam prapadyate. Vasudeva sarvamiti saha mahatma sadurlabha. Now we're getting to the point of like surrender, that Krishna says after many, many lives, a person may come to knowledge, and the kind of knowledge I was speaking about, how I'm categorically different from the energy of this world, and that there's not really a good investment for me here. I've come here to make an investment, and now I'm backing out. So the Jnani starts to figure that out, that, I'm getting ripped off. So, Jnanavamam prapadyate. Then he comes to this point of surrender. After one's a Jnani and figures it out, then after becoming a Jnani, then one comes to this fortunate situation of surrender. Bahunam janmanamante, after many, many births. Jnanavam mam prapadyate vasudeva sarvamiti. He surrenders and he says, okay, the object of everything I do, of my work and of my attention, it's Vasudeva. Vasudeva sarvamiti. Vasudev's everything for me. And he's the source of everything. And saha mahatma sudurlabha, one becomes a great soul. So this means that one surrenders. And so there's the quintessential surrender verse in the Bhagavad Gita. I read it with great interest. Actually, I saw it first because I had the first Bhagavad Gita I got was a small little copy by some Swami that a friend of mine gave me in high school. And I started reading and I said, this is a really good book. And then later on, I got the Back to Godhead magazine, and it had, the copy I got had a excerpt, it actually had the verse, Sarvadharman Parityajan, Prabhupada's purport. And when I read that, it opened the whole world of this, what I call sweet surrender. And now I'm going to read that verse because at the beginning of this class, I wanted to have a point of reference of what we're talking about in surrender. And this verse is so beautiful, you can read it over and over again and see the opportunity that's before us and that Krishna is offering to everybody. And this is verse 1866. And it goes like this. Sarvadharman parityaja Mamekam sharanam braja Aham tvang sarva papebhyo Moksheshami masuchaha. The translation, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Lord has described various kinds of knowledge and processes of religion, knowledge of the Supreme Brahman, knowledge of the Supersoul, knowledge of the different types of orders and statuses of social life, knowledge of the renounced order of life, knowledge of non-attachment, sense and mind control, meditation, etc. He has described in so many ways different types of religion. Now in summarizing Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that Arjuna should give up all the processes that have been explained to him. He should simply surrender to Krishna. That surrender will save him from all kinds of sinful reactions, for the Lord personally promises to protect him. In the 7th chapter, it was said that only one who has become free from all sinful reactions can take to the worship of Lord Krishna. Thus one may think that unless he is free from all sinful reactions, he cannot take to the surrendering process. To such doubts, it is here said that even if one is not free from all sinful reactions, simply by the process of surrendering to Shri Krishna, he is automatically freed. There is no need of strenuous effort to free oneself from sinful reactions. One should unhesitatingly accept Krishna as the supreme savior of all living entities. With faith and love, one should surrender unto him. The process of surrender to Krishna is described in Hari Bhakti Vilas 11.676. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam rakshisyatiti vishvaso groptritve varanam tata atma nikshepa karpanye shadvida sharanagatihi. According to the devotional process, one should simply accept such religious principles that will lead ultimately to the devotional service of the Lord. One should perform a particular occupational duty according to his position in the social order. But if by executing his duty one does not come to the point of Krishna consciousness, all his activities are in vain. Anything that does not lead to the perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness should be avoided. One should be confident that in all circumstances Krishna will protect him from all difficulties. There is no need of thinking how one should keep the body and soul together. Krishna will see to that. One should always think himself helpless and should consider Krishna the only basis for his progress in life. As soon as one seriously engages himself in devotional service to the Lord in full Krishna consciousness, at once he becomes freed from all contamination of material nature. There are different processes of religion and purificatory processes by cultivation of knowledge, meditation in the mystic yoga system, etc. But one who surrenders unto Krishna does not have to execute so many methods. That simple surrender unto Krishna will save him from unnecessarily wasting time. One can thus make all progress at once and be freed from all sinful reactions. One should be attracted by the beautiful vision of Krishna. His name is Krishna because he is all attractive. One who becomes attracted by the beautiful, all-powerful, omnipotent vision of Krishna is fortunate. There are different kinds of transcendentalists. Some of them are attached to the impersonal Brahman vision, some of them are attracted by this supersoul feature, etc. But one who is attracted to the personal feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and above all, one who is attracted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Krishna himself, is the most perfect transcendentalist. In other words, devotional service to Krishna in full consciousness is the most confidential part of knowledge. And this is the essence of the whole Bhagavad Gita. Karma yogis, empiric philosophers, mystics, and devotees are all called transcendentalists, but one who is a pure devotee is the best of all. The particular words used here, ma shuchaha, don't fear, don't hesitate, don't worry, are very significant. One may be perplexed as to how one can give up all kinds of religious forms and simply surrender unto Krishna, but such worry is useless. Feel better? Did any of the points particularly strike you in reading this? Yes, Sundarananda Prabhu.
I'm just paraphrasing Prabhu. All kinds of purificatory activities like meditation, knowledge, all these things leads to, the activities leads to purification, but one can, I think, get the same effect by surrendering to Lord Shri Krishna.
Yeah. Lal Babu, there's a story about Lal Babu. Prabhupada mentions him in the Nectar of Devotion. And you'll see if you go to Gopinath Bazaar in Vrindavan, there's the Lal Babu temple, very beautiful temple there. And he built it. He was a very wealthy industrialist. Well, he was a businessman. He was making a lot of money. And I'm not sure exactly the year, so I can't say he was an industrialist for sure. But in any case, he was wealthy, and he was engaged in business. And as mentioned in the Bhakti Sandarbha, there's a passage, Jiva Goswami says that one day he was walking along the street going about his business, and there was a sweeper woman. Actually, he was standing there, and the sweeper woman was trying to go by him. And she said, time to move on. Time to move. Like that. And suddenly he took it as a direction from Krishna. Like it fructified something of the Sukriti that he had developed over many lifetimes in his heart that he should surrender. He took it as special instruction that now's the time to move on. And then he gave up everything and he became dedicated to building this temple, for which he went door to door and begged, even from his political enemies. He took a very humble role, and that's the context in which he's mentioned in the Nectar of Devotion, and that devotees become very humble, and they go door to door. And of course, interestingly, in a conversation with Prabhupada and an Indian gentleman, a man was beginning to make the case that one had to have Sukriti, previous spiritual qualification, in order to surrender. And Prabhupada basically cut him off and said, no, you can surrender at any time. And then he gave the example of a poor man who was approached by a rich man with a bag with $1 million. And the rich man said, here, take it, no strings attached. And now you have two choices, take it or don't take it. So Krishna says, Sarvadharman parityaja, surrender unto me, I will deliver you personally. And so you can say, take it or don't take it. And somehow, if someone can take it, they can bypass all these other purificatory processes to bring one to the point of surrender. Of course, at the same time, in the Gita, Krishna says, Yesham tantakatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvanva mohanir mukta bhajanti mam dhridavrta. Is it hot in here? Could we have a cooler? We've already suffered in our other temple. For many years, we were 104 degrees inside. And so Krishna says, those who are free from sinful reactions, yesham tvantakatam papam jananam punya karmanam, they're living a good life, a pious life, and also they're free from the sinful reactions. Yesham tvantakatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva mohanir mukta bhajanti mam dhrida. They become dhridavita. They can be more receptive. Their appreciating capacity might be greater. That's possible. Srivas Pandit Prabhu and then Harivamsha. Hare Krishna. Is there a high-pitched sound coming out of that? It sounds like a high-pitched noise. Yeah. That's how the Brahmins killed Vena. With a high-pitched mantra. Can you hear it? It's coming out of here. Somewhere there? Hare Krishna. Okay, go ahead.
So, Prabhuji, please can you elaborate or explain us a little more than how one need not have any qualification to surrender to Krishna, but Krishna here is putting not a qualification but a prerequisite. So please, if you can.
Well, it's a little bit of a mystery, but it's constitutional. It has to do with the constitutional nature of a living entity who is said to be marginal, tatasta, which means he's neither here nor there. He can go either way, and we see all the time. People can be the projector? Okay, I can live with that. Guess it's because it's too hot. It'll cool down. It's probably hotter up there. Constitutional nature of the living entity is he can change his direction. And I just read a quote, sent a quote to somebody the other day, fascinating quote where Prabhupada says, one cannot argue about how, from the position of pure consciousness, the living entity can then suddenly change his course and become consumed by Maya, which is a whole, can of worms. But it indicates that there's a way in which, as the Vedanta Sutra points out, the living entity is an agent. And it says, otherwise, there's no reason for the Shastra, unless the living entity can actually read it and then say, okay, I'll do something about it. There's no reason to have any Shastra. So it gives this logic. Because Shastra is real, therefore there's that means the living entity is an agent for change. So this is indicated here in the process of surrender. You can just think it up and do it yourself. You don't have to wait for a lot of things. And that's one thing that's sweet about it, is once one has that realization, this is the beginning of liberated life, that one makes a conscious choice that I'm going to surrender. And then who can stop you? Nobody can stop you. There's no external circumstances that can stop you from surrendering once you have that determination within your heart. And the wonderful verse given in the Nectar of Devotion from the Bhakti Rasa Rita Sindhu is that during the month of Magh, if somebody decides, I'm taking a bath, it's freezing out there in Magh. And January, I've done this. I went with Madhavananda and Gokulananda, and we went in the month of Magh to Allahabad, and we took our bath, and I could see what they were talking about. But no one could stop us, you know. Some Americans come over to Allahabad. There was nobody else out there, but we said, we're taking our dip in the Ganga. And we jumped in the freezing cold water, and nobody could stop us, not even President, whoever it was at the time. So, you know, if you decide you're going to surrender, you can be an agent for change. Harivamsha Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Actually, that answer really clarified. Even I had that doubt. I like 2 points from this purport. One was pratikulyasya varjita, how you should reject all those things which are not contributing to perfect devotional service. And it also connects with the Shravanadi Jal which we received, that more and more weeds can grow along in the bhakti process. And the second thing which I liked was Rakshishya Titi Vishwaso, that is, you should be confident that Krishna will protect. So that gives a lot of hope.
Yeah, nice. Very nice. Nice points. Yes, Ramananda Saka Prabhu.
What are the 6 items mentioned there regarding the process of surrender in the purport that you read?
The first is that you should accept things that are favorable for your devotional service. Second is to reject things which are unfavorable. Next is to consider Krishna your maintainer, consider him your protector, to always be in a humble state of mind, and to surrender everything, Atma Nivedanam, to give, you know, consider everything belongs to Krishna and to render it to him. It's a purport worth reading over and over again. It's really a masterpiece coming from the spiritual platform, the voice of Krishna calling to us here in the material world. It's so encouraging and enlivening. And just the way he puts it, Masuchaha, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Just make your business surrendering unto me. And this is sweet surrender, because once I turn my attention towards this, that's doable. And nothing else is really doable here in the material world. Everything is insurmountable and difficult. And the onslaught of material nature is extremely frustrating. In the mode of passion, I may think, you know, there's a chance, I have a shot at this. But as one becomes purified and actually decides, I'm going to surrender, Krishna says, Sa Mahatma Sadurlabhaha, such a great soul is very rare. And the person becomes heroic, that I'm opting out of the material world, and I'm not going to give in to the bad masters of the senses and keep the status quo in the material world. 2 kinds of heroes mentioned by Prabhupada in the Srimad Bhagavatam. One is a hero for challenging the material nature and doing his or her best to make a run at a successful life. And the other is the one who realizes that there is no success in this world without surrender to Krishna. Such a great soul becomes a hero for surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's auspicious life. I've recently been reading in the Srimad, well, actually, just this morning I reviewed the third canto, first part of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And there's some sections there that I thought were important in this process of surrender, considering from a holistic point of view what is surrender and how to do it. And looking at the life of Vidura, who was a pure devotee in his own right, and he was in a complicated situation because he favored the Pandavas and was a friend of the Pandavas, very dear to them and close to them. But his family was bent on ruining them. And at the beginning of the third canto, we have this interesting scene, and it's relevant to us because we will also be in such complicated situations in life. It's a product of being a mixture of matter and spirit that we're in these kinds of weird situations where it seems very complicated, because it is. But we see from Vidura what happened is that he was called to give his counsel during the time in which war was being considered. And as Prabhupada mentions in another section of the Bhagavatam, war ruins everybody, practically. It's not that one person wins and the other person loses. He mentions about how he noticed when there was a war between England and Germany, that both countries were ruined financially and also infrastructure-wise and so forth. But so it's a very tense time when two forces are running up to war and so forth. So Dhritarashtra called for Vidura because he was a very exalted person in the family. And they asked his opinion, and he was very straightforward. And his half-brother there was Duryodhana, who was really pushing to fight against the Pandavas and was keeping them out from their rightful claim to the throne and so forth. Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana had been influenced by Shakuni, who was an evil-hearted person. So Vidura comes into the assembly and he says, "This is just wrong what you're doing. You should just give it back to the Pandavas and walk away." And Duryodhana became furious. And you're with the enemy. Like Hiranyakashipu, when his son said, "What'd you learn?" He said, "I like Vishnu." He's like, "What? That's my enemy." There's this friends and enemies thing. And Duryodhana became incensed, and he blasted Vidura, and he said, "Who are you anyway? You weren't even born from, you're born from a kept mistress," and so forth. And, nobody cares for you. And he ordered that, let him be beaten and left to take his possessions, leave him with only his breath. So this section is very powerful because Vidura, and I'll read you the purport, 3.1.16. It says, "Thus being pierced by arrows through his ears and afflicted to the core of his heart, Vidura placed his bow on the door and quit his brother's palace. He was not sorry, for he considered the acts of the external energy to be supreme." I'll read it again. "Thus being pierced by arrows through his ears and afflicted to the core of his heart, Vidura placed his bow on the door and quit his brother's palace. He was not sorry, for he considered the acts of the external energy to be supreme." Interesting. And just that, to be aware, I'm going to read the purport, but one thing I'm looking at in this particular section is the devotee is always preparing for surrendering to Krishna. You may not have the opportunity right now. You may not have the perfect shot at it right now, but you can do everything you can to put yourself in place so when the opportunity comes, I got it. You got to be ready. And this is the anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam, Get things out of the way that are going to hold you back when the opportunity comes. Move them out of the way. You may not have it right now, but take every opportunity you can so when it comes. Louis Pasteur, great discoveries come only unto the prepared mind. So the devotees preparing, put a lifetime in preparation, and as Maharaj Katvanga is glorified in the Bhagavatam. He took his shot at the last moment. He was preparing his whole life, and then he did his duty, fought for the demigods. They said, take a benediction. He said, all I want to know is when I'm going to die. They said, you got about a minute. And in that minute, he was ready. He surrendered to Krishna fully in that time that he had left because he had prepared his mind. We see sometimes, I've heard, devotees who have sort of casually taken devotional service in and out, sometimes in, sometimes out. When death calls, it's a hard voice to reckon with, that you're going to die. And there's a lot of maneuvering. Even naturally, psychologically, there's ways of the grieving process and so forth in which there's denial, and then there's bargaining, and so many things that come up when that final call comes. And of course, one really has to surrender then. There's no waiting. The cab's there. I always think of travel like death, especially we call a cab because we live 7 minutes from the airport. And it's like early in the morning, cab comes, you got to go. It doesn't matter you're ready or not. You're out the door. It's like, but I forgot forget it, go, get in the cab, you're going to miss the plane. And at deaths like that, the cab shows up for you. It's like, he's outside. He's outside now? I said, but my stuff, it's like, get out there. You're going. So you got to be ready. You have to actually be prepared for these things. Vidura is prepared. He's prepared. He's taking all the activities that happen to him in his life as Krishna's arrangement. Tate anukampam susamikshamano bunjatma evatma kritam vipakam hridvagva purvir vidadam namaste jiveta yo mukti pade sadaya. Lord Brahma, in his deep humility in his prayers to Lord Krishna, says, you have to be completely tolerant. Don't try to thrash around. The reactions are going to come to you because it's already done. The movement's already there. You already moved around in the material world, and that stirred things up. You're going to get reactions. And you did it, and you should accept it. You did it to yourself. But just remain calm and go on with your service. Don't stop, and expect the supreme mercy of the Lord. And so this verse and purport show us how to take advantage of how to surrender, how to prepare oneself, and then how to surrender when that opportunity comes. Here's the purport. A pure devotee of the Lord is never perturbed by an awkward position created by the external energy of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita 3:27, it is stated, Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. A conditioned soul is absorbed in material existence under the influence of different modes of external energy. Absorbed in the false ego, he thinks that he is doing everything by himself. The external energy of the Lord, the material nature, is fully under the control of the Supreme Lord, and the conditioned soul is fully under the grip of the external energy. Therefore, the conditioned soul is fully under the control of the law of the Lord, but due to illusion only, he thinks himself independent in his activities. Duryodhana was acting under such influence of the external nature by which he would be vanquished at the ultimate end. He could not accept the sound advice of Vidura, but on the contrary, he insulted that great soul who was the well-wisher of his whole family. Vidura could understand this because he was a pure devotee of the Lord. In spite of being very strongly insulted by Duryodhana's words, Vidura could see that Duryodhana, under the influence of Maya, the external energy, was making progress on the path towards his own ruination. He therefore considered the acts of the external energy to be supreme, yet he also saw how the internal energy of the Lord helped him in that particular situation. A devotee is always in a renounced temperament because the world attractions can never satisfy him. So, just interject something there. I like this statement. A devotee is always in a renounced temperament because the worldly attractions can never satisfy him. A nice sutra. And the word renounce, that means to formally declare one's abandonment of a claim, right, or possession. To formally declare one's abandonment of a claim, right, or possession. And it comes from Middle English, from Old French, from Latin. Renunciare, to protest against. From expressing reversal, and nunciare, to announce. Renunciation. What is it? Formally declare one's abandonment of a right, claim, or possession. It's not mine. Isavasamidam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunjita magrida kasisviddanam. I'm not touching anything that's not given to me as my quota. Nothing. Isavasya spirit. This is the abandonment of claim that I own the world, something belongs to me, I'm entitled, forget it. Renounce. Just say, whatever's my quota, whatever Krishna decides, that comes to me. That's surrender. And then temperament, a renounced temperament. This word temperament means a person or animal's nature, especially as it permanently affects their behavior. That's your temperament. So a renounced temperament. And temperament also comes from Latin, temperare, to mingle or restrain oneself. Sense development was probably influenced by Old French, tempraire, to temper, to moderate. So one holds this renounced, this feeling of considering that I don't have a claim, I don't have a right to try to enjoy, exploit this world, and so forth. And devotee is always on guard. This is a surrendered mood. It means not becoming intoxicated by the enjoying spirit. It's the enjoying spirit is like a drug. It gets into the veins, and then it makes one giddy. And it's dangerous. And Queen Kunti says, Janma Ishvarya Shutta Shri Bhireda Manamada Puman Daivar Hatyavidatum Vai Twamakinchana Gocharam. That there's all the ways that she says you can become intoxicated by this enjoying spirit. You have some wealth, and you think, I'm really cool. And you have some beauty, or you have some high parentage. All these things can go easily to the head, little bubbles to the brain. And then when you're intoxicated by those things, then she's wrong temperament. This is the enjoying temperament. The devotee is in a renounced temperament. Supada mulam bhajata priyasya tyaktanya bhavasya hari priyasya vikarma yachchot patitam katanchit dunoti sarvam hridishani vishtaha. Karabhajana Muni says in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam that because the devotee is always in this renounced temperament, he says, Sapadamulam bhajata priyasya, he's always worshiping the lotus feet of the Lord. And tyaktanya bhavasya, his bhava, his feeling is to be hands off when it comes to the material world, renounced temperament. Tyaktanya bhavasya, that's his bhav. Hari parishaha, because of that, he's very dear to the Lord. Vikarma yachchot patitam katanchid tunoti sarvam hridisani vishta. If he accidentally touches the material energy because of past habit or because the material energy is complicated and entangling, and he made some misstep, there's some vikarma, the Lord understands his surrendered temperament in his heart, and he makes up for it. He sees the sincerity in the heart of the devotee, he makes up for it. So a sutra is that a devotee is always in a renounced temperament because the worldly attractions can never satisfy him. And that's why he's in a renounced temperament, because he's seen something higher. He has a higher taste. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya parandrishya nivartate. He's seen the higher thing. And therefore he's not interested. Even if the senses are, he's not. Because the senses will still keep reaching out and saying, how about this? How about that? How about this? How about that? How about this? The mind will keep bringing in things, and you say, no, thank you. No, thank you. I said, no, thank you. Now, no, thank you. A devotee is always in a renounced temperament because the worldly attractions can never satisfy him. Vidura was never attracted by the royal palace of his brother. He was always ready to leave the palace and devote himself completely to the transcendental loving service of the Lord. He was always ready to leave the palace. Now he got the opportunity by the grace of Duryodhana. And instead of being sorry at the strong words of insult, he thanked him from within, because it gave him the chance to live alone in a holy place and fully engage in the devotional service of the Lord. If you are cultivating this in your heart, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says you should, he said you should be a resident of Vrindavan. And if you can't live there, you should cultivate that in your heart and think, let me take shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam, of chanting. If you're practicing this and hoping for it, that you'll get an opportunity to cease from being incessantly pushed to go about, your work in this world in an ordinary way, and you're cherishing this thought that let me have an opportunity to have full-time devotional service, then you're in a prepared state, and when it comes, you can grab it. Duryodhana instead, the word gata vyata, everyone say gata vyata. Without being sorry, gata vyata, is significant here because Vidura was relieved from the tribulations which trouble every man entangled in material activities. He therefore thought there was no need to defend his brother with his bow, because his brother was meant for ruination. Thus he left the palace before Duryodhana could act. Maya, the supreme energy of the Lord, acted here both internally and externally. There's Yogamaya and Mahamaya, right? I always wondered, in the Gita, Krishna says this, what is it, in the 9th chapter? What verse am I thinking about, Srivas Pandit? Harivamsha, what verse am I thinking of right now? You can do a Vulcan mind meld. Is it? No. That's not what I was thinking about. Yogamaya Samavrita. Naham Prakasha Sarvasya. Thank you, sir. 725. Okay? Let's look at it. Naham Prakasha Sarvasya Yogamaya Samavrita. So interesting that Krishna uses the word Yogamaya Samavrita. I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. Yogamaya. There's Yogamaya and Mahamaya, and I always thought it interesting that in this verse he says, I'm covering the foolish person with my Yogamaya. But Prabhupada explains this verse that it's interchangeable, and according to one's positioning in surrender, it can act as Yogamaya or Mahamaya because of the way I'm positioning myself. So Vidura, because he's a surrendered soul, he's looking for the opportunity to surrender to Krishna. When such reversals of fortune come, he gets the internal energy, inspiration from the Supreme Lord. And he sees it. So he was never sorry at the strong words of insult. He thanked him from within. So this is the sign of a person who's prepared. If you're insulted, generally there's a way in which the ego can overreact and become morose and think I've lost face, and what else? Depressed, very depressed and so forth. But when somebody insults you, have you had this experience? You thank them from within. When there's a great reversal, you think, oh, thank you, that's perfect timing. Just what I wanted. Now's my opportunity. Externally, it may seem like a great disturbance in your life, but internally. And what other examples can you think of in the Bhagavatam when such turmoil that came to a devotee opened for him or her the door of opportunity? Yes? The curse on Maharaj Parikshit that came from a little punk who had no right to curse the king, but he was just puffed up, showing off to his friends. I mean, it was like, watch this, riding their skateboards out there, and they're like, this guy's going down. And he just uttered the curse, and then next thing, Maharaj Parikshit, he took it on his head. He said, let the snake bird or whatever magical thing this Brahmin boy is conjured bite me at once. All I desire is that you go on speaking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he took it as an opportunity, and he said, I was too attached. Too attached. And this is the Lord's mercy coming to me to free me. What else? Yes, Sundarananda. Gajendra, the prayers of surrender. Gajendra was Indradumna in his last life. He was bathing. He offended a sage. Sage got mad. Sage says, you become a dumb animal in your next life. Indradumna was born in the heavenly planets as an elephant. So it was in a good position. He was the king of elephants. It was a beautiful place, better than Maui or any other place you can imagine. And he was in charge. Everything was going well, a little intoxicated, walking down to the beach to bathe with his family members, in the water, spraying them. Crocodile comes, grabs his leg, starts pulling him down. It's a very violent scene, and he can't get free. And now all of that sense of enjoying the material nature, it ebbed out of him, and now he took full shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What an opportunity. And he said, normally pure devotees don't ask for anything, my Lord, but right now I got a crocodile on my leg. If you could just this one time, That's an opportunity. Just do the needful. And what to speak of being prepared, because Prabhupada mentions that he had in his last life done so much preparation. It may come to you in your next life, all this preparation. One iota, one scintilla of sincere intent, Krishna says in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that even if it's su-alpam, tiny bit of preparation, it'll save you. It may come next life also, that Krishna will remind you, yes, you wanted this, I'll come help you. Sundar. Chitraketu. Chitraketu was a king who had millions of wives, and he couldn't get one son, couldn't get one anything. And then he prayed to Angira Rishi. Angira Rishi then told him, I'll help you out, but it's going to be mixed happiness and distress, which is what you get in the material world, which is almost worse than distress, because at least you're ready for it. You've adjusted your mentality. But mixed, it's like, nah. And so he got a son, but then the co-wives became envious. They poisoned the son, and then he experienced the most drastic type of misery that a human being can go through, that their baby dies under strange circumstances, after wanting for so many years to have a son. And then in that situation, Angira and Narada came back. They brought the soul of the boy into the room, and then into the body of the little baby. And then the baby spoke to them. And that really sobered both of them up, because Narada Muni, who then took over the Shiksha at that point, said, so why'd you leave? And living entity said, Well, I'm leaving all the time. I move around. That's what I do. And he said, but your parents, you left them behind. Look, they're in agony. He said, I'm really sorry, but I don't recognize them because I've had so many. It's very sobering, you know. So they then took very serious instruction from Narada Muni after that. And then Chitraketu accepted a mantra, and in 1 week he was able to attain perfection by seeing Sankarsana. And then he offered his prayers to Sankarsana, and he attained perfection. And just after that, he was riding in his airplane, and he saw Lord Shiva, and Parvati was sitting on his lap. And they were on a similar level. They were both pure devotees, so it was not a heavy thing, but he just sort of thought, that's a really funny situation. Lord Shiva, who's the most exalted Vaishnava and example for everyone in the universe, sitting there in public with his wife on his lap. And so he just goes, that's kind of funny. And Lord Shiva thought it was funny too, but Parvati didn't think it was funny. And she cursed him and said, you think it's funny, you'll become a demon in your next life. And Shiva said, oh, you shouldn't have done that. He's a pure devotee and so forth. But in any case, he accepted the curse, and he said, yes, whatever comes is the Lord's arrangement. And in his next life, he took birth as Vritrasura, which is fascinating because although he was born in this huge demoniac body, he was a pure devotee. And he preached to Indra, and he preached to the demons, and he preached to the demigods, and then he went back to Godhead and so forth. And in that section, Prabhupada mentions that there are sometimes devotees who are very serious to attain the highest goal. They may take a few lifetimes to go back to Godhead because their goal is so lofty. They want more purification. And these adversities are for serious people. They're for serious devotees who really want to reach that bedrock of complete surrender and sincerity. Because only from there, only if one is absolutely 100% fixed on this goal of surrender can one experience real happiness and advancement in life. Sarvai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhakti radhoksaje ahektukiya pratiyata yayatma suprasidati anyabilashita shunyam jnana karman yanavritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktir uttamam. So this uttama bhakti means to be completely free from any desire for enjoying the material world, speculating about God in order to have some special power, and being willing to completely surrender to the message of the Lord. Any others? Adversity that brought... Wow, look at that. Okay, Mayapur.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Pratibha. Okay, Mayapur and then Pratibha. One sec. What happened to his microphone? Narada Muni lost his mother. He was single mother, and he met the sages. Right after the sages left, his mother died. He was left all alone. And that was a great opportunity. He wasn't afraid to go out on his own and experience God's creation. And from just that interaction with the sages and hearing from them, he became purified and was able to have communion with the Supreme Lord. And of course, he became the great Narada Muni. But what a precarious situation for a young boy, these extreme circumstances. Pratibha?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Danvat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
When you said adversity for purification, one of Radhanath Swami's quote came into my mind, and it was, he said that when adversities come into a neophyte's life, it is for purification, and for advanced devotees, it's for glorification. And also, when you were talking about surrender, Draupadi came to my mind, and Giraj Maharaj had given a class in Berkeley Temple a few years ago, and he had described how Draupadi was trying to think that he can hold her sari and kind of protect herself. And till the time she was in that mode that, oh, till I'm going to save myself from these warriors, she did not get any help. But when she surrendered completely, she raised her hand and she said, "Hey Govinda, hey Krishna, help me." And immediately Krishna ran to her protection. So that's another thing that came to my mind. Thank you so much for this wonderful class.
Thank you for calling in, and very nice points. And it reminded me of a class that Radhika Raman Prabhu, the inimitable Radhika Raman Prabhu, had given in New Vrindavan at the Festival of Inspiration, where he talked about prayer. And he had mentioned that oftentimes Krishna waits to the last minute. And he always wondered, why does he do that? Like when Prahlad was thrown off the cliff, Krishna caught him at the bottom. And when he was a kid reading the Bhagavatam, he was thinking, why didn't he catch him at the top? And his realization was very profound. It was that actually, that's our opportunity. It's that interim point when you're off the cliff, and then, before you hit the bottom. That's your opportunity to actually, be a soul and really surrender. And, you don't have to wait to go off the cliff to do that. There are small opportunities throughout the day, even every day. I made this point the other day because it's something I realize every day, and a few devotees responded because that's practical. I can do that. The cliff thing sounds a little, intimidating. But there are small opportunities that come unsought throughout the day to make a surrender. It may be even in the way that we interact with our spouse, or we react to a situation that comes to us in our life, and that we can see two sides. As Radhanath Maharaj also gives us an example of good dog, bad dog, which one's stronger, the one you feed. And it's also surrender to take a conscious look, step back, and feed the good dog, do the right thing. In that one instant, there's a victory. And one realizes one's potential for independent movement in this world, that I can actually decide. And a lot of times people say, well, Krishna knows what's going to happen, why did he give us free will, and so forth. And it's to facilitate perfect love. And it's actually such a beautiful thing that Krishna has made a freedom for the soul. But along with freedom comes great responsibility. And people cry for freedom everywhere you go. But then, are you ready to handle it? Are you ready to handle it? You have to take you have to deal with the ramifications if you don't handle it properly, because it's very powerful. We'll take two more. Yes. You had your hand up. Go ahead, and then Mukaravind.
Queen Kunti.
Tell about Queen Kunti.
She and her sons, they went through so many tribulations. There were attempts to kill their sons all the time, but she was only, when Krishna was leaving, she was only thinking that let more calamities come upon us, so that at least you can be around. If the calamities are gone, you're also going.
Yeah, and she took full shelter of Krishna when they came back, when their sons came back from the battle of Kurukshetra. She said, one day the sun may turn cold and the moon may turn hot, but you always keep your promise, Krishna. Mukaravind?
In the 11th canto, the Avanti Brahman.
Give us the bhav from that, about the Avanti Brahmana.
Maybe I'm not knowing the complete thing.
Okay, so the Avanti Brahmana, whose famous verse is immortalized, many devotees chant that after they chant their Gayatri mantra. Itam sa astaya parahamanishtam adyasitam purvatamar maharshivya aham trishami durantaparam tamomukundangre nishevayaiva. I shall cross over the insurmountable ocean of material existence. And the Avanti Brahman was a landowner, and he was a very miserly person. He tried to hold on to everything and hoard it all. And because he was such a miser, the demigods turned on him, his friends turned on him, his family turned on him. Nobody likes misers. And gradually, all of his wealth and sukriti drained out. And he was left as a person with no standing, no money, nothing. But somehow he had this good fortune in his heart, the inclination to walk away from it all as an opportunity to surrender to God. And he went out wandering as a sannyasi. And everywhere he went, he got insulted. The people would tie him up, they'd beat him, they'd take away his water pot, they'd urinate on him, they'd call him foul names. They'd say, oh, just look at this sannyasi, he's so devout, just like a duck. And just make the worst kinds of insults, and he simply tolerated. And he said that if somebody bites their own tongue, who can they blame? So in the same way, all these kinds of adversities come to me in this life, and who can I blame? It's coming because of my own involvement in the material nature. These are reactions coming to me. And he had this profound realization about how he wasn't affected by the comings and goings and the movements in the material world. It was only the interaction of his mind with the modes of material nature. And he said, actually it was Krishna who said, because he's the one telling this story in the 11th canto to Uddhava. And he says, actually the mind has fearsome godlike powers over the living entity. And it's only for the sake of the mind, conditioned mind, that the living entity has endured the suffering of the material world for millions and billions of births. But he became so determined, and he said this verse, that I will cross over the ocean of material existence by surrendering myself to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma, within everyone's heart. This was approved by the previous acharyas who surrendered unto the Supreme Lord. Lord Chaitanya liked that verse. He liked the verse. That mood of that verse, the bhava that I will go on with my devotional service in spite of anything. This mood of surrender. Don't stop chanting Hare Krishna for anything or anybody, no matter what. This kind of mood is very sweet, actually, because then you know whatever circumstance comes, I've already prepared myself. I'm going to surrender and keep going. So adversity comes to lift us up, to give us an opportunity to come to the next level. And if one lives one's life, if one manages one's expectations in this life in that way, then what can hurt you? If you're surrendered to the fact that adversities will come and you feel in your heart, let them become, because that will help me to prove my surrender to Krishna. Just that very thought is enlivening, sweet, satisfying. On the other hand, if I consider I'm going to run and hide, I'm going to rearrange everything in order to avoid these kinds of circumstances, and maybe even blame God if they come to me because I don't deserve it, then I unnecessarily cause more suffering to myself. So a couple more points from Vidura. In 3.117, I think that's what I was just reading. Vidura considered himself less pious, and therefore he decided to travel to all the great places of pilgrimage. So I just like this phrase. Is it 3.117? 16? Okay, maybe it's in the next page. Vidura considered himself less pious, and therefore he decided to travel to all the great places of pilgrimage in the world in order to achieve greater piety and advance nearer the Lord. So this is the aspect of the formula for surrender given in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in which one should always consider oneself to be fallen. And here, Vidura, because he considered himself less pious, because of his association with impious people. He thought, I'm contaminated. I have to go purify myself. So if I'm always hungry and humble, then I'll avail myself to opportunities for purification. If I think I'm okay already, which is a mantra that people often chant when we offer the Bhagavad Gita. We've heard it more times than I care to remember. Here, have a look at this. I'm okay. I always wondered what to say to that. And then I asked Vijay Prabhu, I said, what do you say when people say I'm okay? He said, you tell them, I know you're okay, but you can always be better. At that time, Lord Krishna was personally present in the world, and Vidura could have at once approached him directly, but he did not do so because he was not sufficiently freed from sin. This is a humble position, to be the servant of the servant, to purify oneself. Those who think, I'll rush in, I'm qualified. This is utsahan mayi. It's over-enthusiasm, thinking that I'm I'm thinking I'm advanced, and so forth. But the pure devotees, those who are on the path of surrender, they're always thinking, I'm less qualified. I'm impious. I need to be purified. And therefore, they're open to all circumstances in which they can associate with great devotees. And this prayer that, please, Krishna, give me association of the most advanced devotees and give me the intelligence and the heart to take advantage of that situation, of that association. This kind of prayer is very powerful. And it goes on, Prabhupada goes on, one cannot be 100% devoted to the Lord unless and until he is completely free from all effects of sin. This goes back to the verse, Yesham tvanta katam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva muhanir mukta vajanti mam dridavrta. I mean, to be completely determined in devotional service means that the sinful tendencies must be out of the way. This is nishta, which means the absence of the pushings that dissuade me from performing my bhajan, from going on with my chanting of Hare Krishna. Those can be removed. After they're removed, one's situated in this dridavrta, determination that can't be moved. Vidura was conscious that by the association of the diplomatic Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana, he had lost his piety and was therefore not fit to associate at once with the Lord. So again, humility. Now in 3.124, Prabhupada says, actually 3.124, I think I have the verse here. Yeah, this is the verse 3.124. Thereafter, he, Vidura, passed through very wealthy provinces like Surat, Sauvira, and Matsya, and through western India, known as Kuru Jangala. At last, he reached the bank of the Jamuna, where he happened to meet Uddhava, the great devotee of Lord Krishna. And in the purport, Prabhupada writes, both Vidura and Uddhava were such elevated devotees, and therefore they both came to the bank of the Jamuna and met each other. No accident. And this is what happens when one takes up this mission in life to surrender to Krishna. He makes arrangements for one to meet like-minded devotees who are more advanced than oneself, that can help one in the path of devotional service. And then, next 25 is a verse which is very fascinating because it says, this is 3.125, then, due to his great love and feeling, Vidura embraced him, Uddhava, who was a constant companion of Lord Krishna and formerly a great student, Brihaspati's. Vidura then asked him for the news of the family of Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. I'm going to read the purport because it's profound. I mean, they're all profound, but Vidura was older than Uddhava, like a father, and therefore when the two met, Uddhava bowed down before Vidura, and Vidura embraced him because Uddhava was younger, like a son. Vidura's brother Pandu was Lord Krishna's uncle, and Uddhava was a cousin to Lord Krishna. According to social custom, therefore, Vidura was to be respected by Uddhava on the level of his father. Uddhava was a great scholar in logic, and he was known to be the son or disciple of Brihaspati, the greatly learned priest and spiritual master of the demigods. Vidura asked Uddhava about the welfare of his relatives, although he already knew that they were no longer in the world. I'll repeat that. Vidura asked Uddhava about the welfare of his relatives, although he already knew that they were no longer in the world. They had been killed at Prabhash. They killed each other. That's a long story. This inquiry appears to be quite queer, but Srila Jiva Goswami states that the news was shocking to Vidura, who therefore inquired again due to great curiosity. Thus, his inquiry was psychological and not practical. The reason I like that is because it shows how, although one may be on the path of pure devotional service, there will be shocking circumstances in one's life that one has to deal with, and that there are psychological ramifications that one has to deal with. And here and further on, we'll find that Vidura, hearing the shocking news about all the members of the Yadu dynasty killing each other at Prabhash after a drunken brawl, it was all the arrangement of Krishna actually to take all his relatives out of the world, because if he left them behind, they would be too powerful and they'd overrun the world and so forth. But just because one is on the path of pure devotional service doesn't mean that there won't be psychological anomalies and difficulties to deal with in life. But this is the way we see that Vidura is dealing with it. He brings up the point to Uddhava, even though he knows they're killed. But you know, like after an earthquake or a major disaster, have you ever been through something like this? Haven't been in California long enough? It's some kind of disaster comes. People, I just noticed the last earthquake we had here, which was the Loma Prieta earthquake. I was living in Burlingame, and the bridge sort of half fell down. And you know, people were shaken up. They start to realize that you can't take anything for granted and anything can happen at any time. I walked downtown Burlingame and I just saw everyone was out of their house talking to each other. How you doing? How you doing? They'd never talked to each other before in their lives. It's like, how are you? I don't know. I've been here 30 years. How are you? And there's a psychological way in which when the material nature moves, that we suddenly realize that, oh, I'm helpless. I'm a little insignificant creature here. And we reach out. And in any case, that in the process of surrender, it's very important to have association with advanced devotees with whom we can process all the different psychological changes that happen in our life, as they will happen. And it's not that we simply remain stoic and stuff it in, but we reach out and we deal with devotees, and we discuss these things, and we take shelter of advanced devotees to process these various changes that we go through in our life. Guya makyati prichiti, Srivas Prabhu.
Same thing with 9/11 also.
Srivas Pandit Prabhu is saying same thing with 9/11 also, when major disaster hits. So I was just fascinated by this aspect of a surrendered soul taking shelter of pure association in order to deal with the changes of the world, and that's how to deal with it in this life of surrender. And then it becomes very sweet, because actually what's happening is I'm processing it in the right way, with the right association. And by that advice, by that processing, I begin to look at the world in a different way and react to it in a different way. Vidyam chayas tadvedo bayam saha. Avidyayam ratum tirtva vidyayam ratum ashnate. Only one who can learn the process of nescience and that of transcendental knowledge side by side can transcend the influence of repeated birth and death and enjoy the full blessings of immortality. We're we're mixed up with the illusory energy, and so we have to deal with it in the right way. This is one of the sweet processes of surrender. So much is available from that. Then I jump to 326. Is everyone okay? Okay, 326. Prabhupada writes, Out of all of them, some may be influenced by the association of pure devotees and thus get the chance to execute devotional service by attainment of taste. This taste is the seed of devotional service, and one who is fortunate enough to have received such a seed is advised to sow it in the core of his heart, as one cultivates a seed by pouring water to fructify it. The seed of devotional service sown in the heart of a devotee may be cultured by pouring water in the form of hearing and chanting of the holy name and pastimes of the Lord. Particularly, I wanted to point out from this that Prabhupada said, this taste is the seed of devotional service, and one who is fortunate enough to have received such a seed is advised to sow it in the core of his heart. The taste is the seed, and that we get from this intimate association with pure devotees. That's actually the main way that we advance. Okay, Priya Kishori's here. Why don't you come up? We're going to have a kirtan. Did you like that one? That the taste is the seed? Profound, right? And then in this chapter, 3.2.23 is a famous verse, Aho Bhakyam Stanakalakutam, where Uddhava says, who would surrender to anybody else except Krishna? Because he's remembering the pastimes of Krishna, and he remembers how Krishna killed Baki. Baki means the sister of Bakasura. He killed Baki when he was just a little baby. So Baki came, and she disguised herself as a beautiful young nursemaid, and she put deadly poison on her breast. She walked into the home of Nanda Yashoda, and then there was the devotees there. There was a very kind of open and loving mood there, and she was so attractive and so motherly looking that they just allowed her in, because that's the way it is in village life. And so she went in with this mission to kill Krishna. So she picked up Krishna, and she put her a nipple into his mouth, and then he sucked the poison, sucked the air, and he killed her. And she assumed this gigantic form, 8 miles long, crashed down on the ground, and there was little baby Krishna playing on this huge mountainous figure of Putana and so forth. And then it goes on, the pastime goes on, and Putana attains a very special kind of liberation as one of Krishna's mothers in the spiritual world, which is a very intimate kind of relationship that one can have with Krishna. And what's pointed out here is, and Prabhupada says in the purport, the Lord accepts the least qualification of the living entity and awards him the highest reward. That is the standard of his character. Therefore, who but the Lord can be the ultimate shelter? So, Uddhava is saying, who would take shelter of anybody else? Nobody else does that. It takes the least qualification and gives you the highest reward for that. So in the process of surrender, by hearing about Krishna, how he he sells himself to his devotees. And even just a little gesture in the way of serving Krishna by a demon, he accepts as a big thing. What to speak of if you really sincerely try to please Krishna? What is going to be the reaction? What is going to be the result of that? So this is inspiring to hear this, because then the devotees think that why not surrender to Krishna? If you surrender to your boss completely, we might have a feeling that I could be fired at any time. I mean, it's circumstantial. What can we do? We have to let you go. It could be unceremonious. There could be a guard there waiting when you show up one day and they said, you clear your desk, you got 10 minutes to get out. That happens, right? All the time in the material world. And even if somebody's benevolent, and sometimes you hear stories about a benevolent, wealthy person who the business is going down, but he still maintains his employees and so forth. But ultimately, Krishna is all powerful and he's all merciful. So he can actually do something about our situation and really protect us. So Uddhava says, surrender to Krishna. Sounds like a good idea. And Krishna says, surrender to me, I'll take care of you. And Prabhupada said, if a man walks in and he looks well off and he pulls out his briefcase and then he says, okay, you line up, I'll take care of all your affairs, you just don't worry. You line up? But you might not line up. You might think, who is this character? And what does he want from me? And, can he really, even if he was the best of all philanthropists, am I going to have to pay taxes on this? And, there's so many considerations. It's complicated. But if Krishna says it, if we at least even theoretically accept that there's a supreme being who's all powerful and all merciful, and you have to do that in order to have a little, spring in your step in life at all, to understand that there's a supreme who's making all this variety in this world, and one who understands that and then entertains this idea that he's all powerful, all merciful, and great devotees are saying that who would surrender to anybody else, then one might have the urge to just haul off and surrender. And who could stop you? And who would blame you? And what would actually happen if you did that? I'm preaching to the choir because of all your surrendered souls, but I'm just saying, if someone actually entertained the thought and then prayed in the pitch black, please, Krishna, let me surrender. Let me be the one who actually completely surrenders to you and gives my heart and soul to you, what might happen? What do you think? You don't have to think. Yes, Gita Priya? You go back to Godhead. That's a good answer. Shraddha? There's a text. Okay, go ahead.
This is Vishakha Leela Mataji. She just wanted to send in my gratitude to Prabhu for such a wonderful class. And here comes the main
Sending
thing.
my gratitude back to you, Vishakha Leela, for
Did you hear that?
having such a large appreciating capacity.
Yeah. And here comes even better from her. Some of us are writing out Bhakti Vaibhav exam this Sunday from 3rd canto, chapter 1 to 15. And Prabhu's talk has helped us in going deeper and understanding the chapters from different perspectives. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Oh, Bhakti Vaibhav exam this week. Fantastic. That's great. I didn't even know. That's wonderful. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Go Premanande, Dai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Dai Gaur Hari Bol. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Shri Harinam Mantra ki jai, Shri Harinam Prabhu ki jai, Go Premanande, Haribo. Now take a few reflections. One thing that you heard that stuck in your mind, that you're taking out in your pocket. Someone grabs you in the parking lot by the arm and says, "What was that guy talking about in there?" You'll say, yes.
Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj, for bringing so many nice purports. And I particularly like the one thing then when you told that it's not like cliff, and it may be sometime, pushing from cliff may be threat, and it's not so much you can take, but you can moment to moment surrender and prepare yourself. And you give an example of that what great discoveries comes to the prepared mind. And you give an example of Vidura, like how at the right moment actually, sorry, you also substantiated your statement by the Shastra that how Vidura at the right moment when he heard the Duryodhan word, he has taken as a blessing, not as a misfortune, but he was not sorry, but he was thank you to him. So
nice.
That was a very great lesson.
Good points. If you stay in this mood of surrender, then time is on your side, because you will get a shot.
So Prabhuji, you said how entitlements and all that, like we should not have, and we should accept whatever comes adversity and surrender to Krishna. But even in Vidura's case, like if we, in our material dealings, if we don't empower our entitlement, people say that you're not strong. And even in Vidura's case, people could say that like he just walked away, kind of escapism, because you're not fighting against and proving yourself. So how do we? Well,
if you are properly aligned and your intention is sincere and you're doing it at the right time for the right reasons, you got nothing to worry about. Let the world cry foul, and you're still going for it. Once you develop that inner determination, even Dhruva, when he left his family, everyone could say, you're just a boy, you still, you have things to do. Narada Muni tried to talk him out of it, just to test him, and he said, "That's okay, thank you, I got to go." And he wouldn't budge. When the determination is like that, you will be redeemed in the eyes of the public and everything else. I've told this story before, but I like it very much. When I took my parents' ashes to put in the Jamuna, one year I ran into Samapriya. Her mother had just died, and we were exchanging stories, and she had her mother's ashes also. So she was telling how she had joined the Hare Krishna movement when she was young, a young hippie girl. In fact, she became famous because she was attractive, and they still is. They took a picture of her as a young hippie girl, and she was the poster child for Woodstock. And she later on, some insurance company, this was just about 6 years ago, they refound that picture and they were trying to create a 60s image or something, and they used it without her permission, which was a big mistake. And anyway, she was famous. And so I'm just illustrating that a little bit to say that she ran off and joined the Hare Krishna movement and didn't care a fig for her family and everything like that at the time. I mean, she cared for them deeply, but her dedication was to Krishna. And one of her brothers had disowned her because she had neglected the parents, according to him, not given enough attention. And there can be this tension, in society between people who are responsible for their jobs, for their parents, and so forth. And look at you, you're just surrendering to Krishna. What's wrong with you? You irresponsible person. But what happened was, at the last 3 months of her mother's life, when she had a terminal illness, Sampriya went home and took care of her mother. Nobody else could, and especially when the time of death came, it's a process. If anybody's been around somebody dying, you don't just drop dead. I mean, you can, but generally people, they start to lose their tejas, and you can see they're going through this process of dying. And then the psychological test at the time of death for everybody. So she was there, she knew what to do. She knew how to deal with that situation. And everyone else sort of, they become squeamish. They back off and they say, okay, you deal with it. After her mother passed away, the brother who had forsaken her came back and apologized. And he said, now I understand. We were meant to be there for her in life, and you are the only one qualified to be there for her in death, because you've cultivated your whole life. It's such a traumatic experience for the whole family, for the mother to die and so forth. So there may be this interim point where someone thinks that, why aren't you participating? Yanisha sarvabhutanam tasyam jagrati samyami. There's a way in which the materialist sees the spiritualist as, you're a flake. Why are you just singing all day? And then the spiritualist thinking, why are you working hard all day? What's your problem? So there's this clash of the worlds. But if one is sincere and one is properly aligned through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra in one's service, you're unassailable. And Shastra says the same. Devarshi bhutap nandrinam pitranam nakinkaro nayam ranicharajan sarvatmaraya sharanam sharanyam gato mukundam parihrittakartam. If you're surrendering to Mukunda, if you're giving everything you've got, and that's your whole direction in life, even if you can't do it yet, if you have that achuta bhava, that sentiment that for Krishna you're surrendering to him, that any other debt you have to society is not considered. You're exempt. You're exempt from that. And when you need to be strong, humble doesn't mean that you give up your position, you lose your posture in life. Even if you're working in a material, so-called material circumstance in life for your livelihood, it doesn't mean that you're a wimp. It doesn't mean that you just secede to everyone's desire, that you agree for people to walk on you and so forth. Humility means really that you're aligning yourself with a higher purpose and taking yourself out of the center, and your real purpose in life is to serve Krishna. And if at a particular time in your life you have to go through, at various stages in your life, when you have to go through various dances in the material world to maintain your body and your family and so forth, you still maintain humility. It doesn't just mean to be meek and humble and everyone says, you go to hell, and then you say, okay, I'll just go to hell, fine. The Vaishnavas are not like that. And they're highly respected as well. They're excellent in what they do because their senses are pure. I went back to college and I after being in the Brahmacharya ashram for 13 years, and I went in and it's like, God, I couldn't believe how easy it was because I knew how to be a student. I got in there and teachers were looking at me like, where'd this guy come from? Because I actually listened to them. My senses were like fixed. I knew how to sit there and listen. I just thought that's what you do when a teacher talks. And everyone else sitting around, concentrate, feet on the desk. I'm thinking, God, these guys, no respect and everything like that. So, when you're working in Krishna consciousness, when you're chanting Hare Krishna, your senses become purified. You can do everything better Bhaktivinoda Thakur did his work in half the time that everyone else did, and his cases didn't reverse like everybody else's, a much lower rate. So everyone wanted him in every district. They said, get the Thakur down here. He's nobody tops the Thakur. So that's Vaishnavas. They're excellent at what they do. And the humility is because they won't budge from their determination to serve Krishna. It's not that they just say, oh, you know, whatever you say is okay. It's not whatever Krishna says is okay. That's humility. They're not whimsical. They don't act according to their desire for sense gratification. They stick to the principle of serving Krishna even as they're doing their duty in the material world. That's humility. It's different. All right? Yes. We have about 4 minutes.
So I like the clarification given in the purport to Bhagavad Gita 1866, comparing it to the 7th chapter where it talks about you have to be free of all sinful reactions. And here in 1866, Prabhupada says it that you don't have to wait, because that's one way of procrastinating your surrender to Krishna. Yeah. And I was going to ask you that for a sutra, like, you know, what do I do to get into this practice of surrendering? And I saw this nice little thing on Natalie Mataji's bag.
Lululemon, of course.
So it says, do
Finds
one...
a sutra on Lululemon. Go ahead, sorry.
So it says, do one thing a day that scares you. And I was like, surrendering to Krishna scares me a lot.
Yeah.
So I could start in steps, you know, like, you know, there'll be so many opportunities thrown open to me, but I could at least take one, and for that one little one, surrender to Krishna and get to do that.
Well done. One more? Yes, Harivamsha, then Malini, then... Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you for wonderful class. I also really like the point of always being in the preparation mode. Because if we keep preparing, then at one time the adversities and as in the case of Vidura, the internal and the external energy align in that way. And then you're right into that situation, and that longing is very important. And I particularly like the verse which connects with it, which is Yamunacharya's prayers, Bhavantam Ivanucharan Nirantara, Prashantan Hishesha Manorathantra, Kadaham Ekantika Nitya Kinkara, Prahasharishyami Sanat Jivitam. That is, when I will have the chance to permanently serve such a befitting master. So that kind of longing, today class was completely on that one. So thank you.
Nice. Beautiful. Well done. 2 more quick.
Prabhuji, what Shraddha Mataji was saying, to do one thing scary every day. I remember the first time she came for book distribution with us to door-to-door apartments. We went to an apartment where there was a sign which says no soliciting. And the gate, it was gated apartment, and then we called just some random number and we just asked them to open the door, and she went inside. She said, "This is really scary."
You didn't say that right. What was even more scarier was that it was a gated community and somebody drove in, and then Malini Mataji drove right behind him in the car.
The point that I liked was the last part which you said, that I'll pray to Krishna that let me surrender unto you. And that prayer, I really like that, because I don't know how to do it, but just the prayer that let me do this one thing, that is to surrender unto you.
Nice. Ramsundar got the last word.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Like in Steve Jobs, in his famous Stanford speech, he concludes by saying, always stay hungry and stay foolish. So I could never comprehend that properly, but today it says always hungry and humble. Always be hungry for to be the servant of the servant of the servant.
And Mahaprabhu said to the Mayavadi sannyasis at Varanasi that my spiritual master called me Murka, a fool.
Yes.
And Prabhupada makes that you should always remain a fool before your spiritual master.
Yes.
Not that you should act like one, but you should feel like you're clean slate. I don't know anything. Please, this is that kind of surrender brings real knowledge. Amanitvam adamvipam.
Thank you.
Better hold that one. Vancha kalpaturvascha kripasannubhyevacha patitanam bhavanibhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnavini ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Go Premanande, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. I have to catch a early flight to Washington, D.C., so if I may have your permission, I'm going to bolt because I still have some packing to do. And Madan Mohan Prabhu is here somewhere. He can play Madunga. Give him a Madunga, and see if he needs it tuned. Hare Krishna. Books.
Krishna, Hare Krishna. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Jayo Jayo Gaura Chande Arotika Shobha की बजाय जय गौरा चांदे आरती का शो